Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Another entry here based on your suggestions. This time we're going to talk about a location as far as the cryptid, and it ties into two previous items that I've talked about in the past. One is one of my favorite Cryptids and Monsters, and that is the Genius Loci. Those of you that have followed my channel for the longest time now know that remains one of my favorite cryptids because of the very loose way that a Genius Loci can apparently manipulate people that come across its location. And then the other thing that it's tied to is, like I've done a video in the past with regards to another location, and that is the blue hole. And the reason why I mentioned this is because apparently that is a place that seems to have some kind of resonance, some kind of weird paranormal stuff where people that come across it seem to have a unique experience. And what I'm talking about here now, everything that ties into this, is a place that's called the Cecil Hotel, but it's also known as the Hotel Cecil. And this is actually all based on a recommendation from one of you here about a girl named Elisa, her last name Lamb. This was also recommended a little while back about talking about this, but I never could find the right time or the place to do so. But coming across all this information now and based on this recommendation, I wanted to go ahead and introduce it now and share this very strange, this very tragic circumstance that occurred just recently, very recently, and it all ties to this location, the Cecil Hotel, where after all the information that I'm about to describe, hopefully, if everything was told correctly, you would agree that something is very weird with that location. And could it also be a real life location of a Genius Loci? So here's what occurred. The Cecil Hotel is there in California. It's been around for a long time. It was constructed since 1924. So we're talking about something that is nearly 100 years old. It was built at the time as a place really for business travelers, but over time it changed into something else. It became a place for people that were of a more seedier type, considered, and this is the quote, transients. These are people that are just looking for places to either stay on a temporary basis or places where somebody could stay and not be known that they're there. They're just looking for a not a permanent spot, but some place where they could just stay and then just be on their own and then move to another place, nomads of sorts. And this hotel, ever since its time and its place and its location, I mean, it has come across and it hasn't been involved. Even before the death of Elisa Lam, it has been involved with some notorious circumstances. For example, this guy that you're looking at here still remains one of the most infamous serial killers around, and his name is Richard Ramirez. He was a reported resident there at the at the Cecil Hotel. Richard Ramirez was unknown how long he was there, but purportedly it was back in 1985. So that's where he stayed, and he of course went on to later have some very sick things done to other people, to other women. There was another serial killer by the name of Jack Unterweger who lived there at the Cecil Hotel also later on, this a couple years later in 1991. And then also, this was also a location of one of the victim. So if you've ever heard the name the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short, this was rumored to be one of her last places where she stayed at right before she was found murdered back in 1947. Coincidence? Here you have all these three people, two of them being serial killers and one killed by a serial killer, all living around for a brief period of time, no matter how brief, right there at the Cecil Hotel. Something is going on at that location, and that's where again I tie it to the possibility of a Genius Loci. So, just a very quick summary. Check out my video if you haven't had a chance on the Genius Loci to get the full details. But essentially, it's a bad thing, something not really like the closest analogy would be like a spirit, but it would be something that just happens to dwell at that location. It's bound to that location like an imaginary chain tied to the ground. It's bound to it. It cannot go beyond the length of its boundness. It cannot go beyond the length of its imaginary chain. So whatever it does, it pretty much can only do it right there in the radius of its location. And what it tends to do is it tends to manipulate people in a bad way. Like, it tries to subtly manipulate them to do bad things to themselves or to do bad things to others. One of the best examples is that great film Session 9. Highly, highly recommended if you haven't seen it. And it goes to show what happens to somebody as they're essentially manipulated by one of these things, by Genius Loci. There's that really famous quote at the end where the Genius Loci reveals itself through one of its patients, the patient that was found throughout the film, talking into some tapes. And when the doctor questions it and asks where it lives, the Genius Loci nonchalantly states, "I live within the weak and the wounded," in a really creepy voice. But it's very unsettling film, and the notion that something like that potentially exists in this world. So, with that being said, keep all of that in mind when I talk about the death of Elisa Lam. This occurred just a couple of years back, 2013, February 19th to be exact. So we're talking about something that's just really, really shy of just 2 years, just a little over 2 years old. This is what happened. This girl, Elisa Lam, she stayed at that same hotel. She traveled there. Apparently, she was there. I don't know if it was on some kind of business or if it was some kind of school item. She was like your everyday normal girl. She was somebody that people described was vibrant. She was happy. She was outgoing. She was personable. There was apparently some bouts with her before of bipolar and also having depression. And because of it, she was known to have taken 4 drugs. But none of what I'm about to describe, none of these drugs were within her body at the time of her death. So it leads one to think that something else was manipulating or causing her to do this. And also, her family has stated that she never had any particular history of having any kind of suicidal thoughts or suicidal attempts. So everything that I'm about to describe just seems all the more stranger. The best way to sum up what happened to her and how bizarre and how strange it is to check out the link I've included within this video, and that is a link of pretty much the last known moment of her life, and it's very unsettling. It's up on YouTube. Check out the link again. It's very short. It's about 2 minutes and change, and what it is it's her stepping into an elevator, but immediately you sense that something is not right, and as the playback continues, you'll realize that you're looking at something that is slowly becoming more and more unsettling. She apparently is looking at something, or something is looking back at her, but she's interacting with something in that elevator or near and around that elevator. And whatever occurs, we can't see it. There's no audio in the video that I know of. If there is, somebody point that out. But there's nothing in terms of what we know, what she's looking at, but she's interacting with something. And as she goes in and about the elevator, she seems shocked, she seems concerned, she seems frightened, she huddles in one corner, she peeks out the elevator. Also, what stood out immediately was that most elevator doors, whenever you go in into an elevator, they close within about 5 seconds. This elevator door, however, does not. It stays wide open, as if something is there hovering right over the open space that an elevator uses to detect if somebody is stepping in or out, and that's why it closes or doesn't close. But there are brief situations within the video where she's standing and she's doing nothing for like 10 plus seconds, and yet the elevator door never closes. The creepiest part comes towards the end when she finally fully steps out, of the elevator. And as she does so, she looks towards her right and she's talking to somebody. She's motioning to somebody. Her hands. She almost gets a little wild, in fact, in the video. And it seems like whatever is talking to her, maybe she's exasperated. She's trying to reason with it. But then towards the end, that's when it almost seems like she comes to a sense of a resolution, almost like, okay, I agree with it. That's it. I agree. And then she calms down, and then she moves towards her left, which is away from the camera, and that's the last of it. That's the last that we see of her, and it was pretty much the last of her life, because here's what happened next. Right there at that Cecil Hotel, she was found missing after several days. Her parents reported her missing. There was nobody that could find her. There was an investigation. Police were trying to track her down. They did the usual motions, visiting her room, bringing in a dog, somebody that could, try to see if the dog could find her scent. Nothing could be done. Nothing could be found as far as this poor girl. However, but cut to about a couple weeks later, and then that's when something strange started happening there in the hotel. Residents of the hotel started stating that their water tasted funny, and in fact it looked a little darker than usual. And then on top of that, whenever somebody was trying to take a shower or use any other type of water, there was very low pressure. And so finally, somebody from the hotel, one of the workers there, went up to the water towers, which you'll see a picture of here. And when they did so, they opened one up, and you guessed it, they found her body right there inside the water tower. How sick is that? The people there that were in the hotel for those couple of weeks, they were drinking pretty much her decomposed body. And when that happened, immediately, of course, the guests, everyone is evacuated from the hotel. The hotel took over. They sent all the guests someplace else. There were lawsuits later involved, but that's something else entirely different. The key thing does, looking at this water tower, set of water towers, you can see that it's not something very easily accessible to. These water towers are about 8 feet tall, apparently. And then also, the places to get to these water towers are all locked with both physical locks and also with alarms. And this is done, of course, to protect the location itself from having some crazy out there trying to contaminate things. So if this girl Eliza Lamb, if what she did was essentially go from the elevator up to the water towers, if she did it the traditional way, i.e. the way that the employees would have, she would have set a lot of things off. A lot of alarms, a lot of notifications going off, but nothing like that happened. So very, very strange. The only known conclusion is that she must have used the fire escape, but in and of itself, that would have meant pretty much risking life and limb to get there. She had a passion to get to that water tower. Whatever was influencing her, whatever was forcing her to do this, I mean, she would have had to have used that fire escape to do so, and she did it. I mean, whatever extreme circumstance compelled her, she used it, and she got up. She got up and climbed an 8-foot tall water tower with no visible other way than essentially just latching on to the top portion and pulling herself up, her full body weight over, and then she was able to physically open one of those latches or one of those hoods right there on the water tower, and then squeeze herself in, shut it afterwards for her, shut herself in, and that's it, let herself drown. And what makes it even more creepier is the subsequent investigation and the autopsy. Again, there was no drug evidence found, so she was completely lucid when she did this. She was absolutely 100% fine, at least physically. So no drug manipulation, both drugs, medicinal drugs or drugs to get high, nothing like that. And then there was no struggle on top of her body. Nobody there had forced her in. There were no bruises, there were no cuts, there were no rapes, nothing like that in terms of somebody let's say killing her beforehand and then dumping her body in there. She did this 100% out of her own accord. She voluntarily did this. She got in, shut the latch behind her, and knowing that she were drowned, did so and did it in a very calm state. How creepy is that? That's unsettling. This is like Silent Hill type unsettling. This is the type of thing where, like, based on all this information, you can't just help but point to the notion that something was manipulating her, and that's where I tie it all back to the idea of, could there be like a real life Genius Loci there at the Cecil Hotel? And again, with so many other experiences in the past, the Richard Ramirez, the other serial killer, the Elizabeth Short, I mean, this is a place that has history. Something is there, and it'll be very interesting to see if something like this occurs in the future. Yet another incident at the hotel. There's so much notoriety with this hotel too that is no longer known as the Cecil Hotel. It's been completely rebranded. It's now known as Stay on the Main, and most businesses, they do these kind of things so that way they could have no affiliation with any of the past history. But if you're brave enough, if you want to try it, if anyone is there in California and knows about this location and knows others that have stayed, if there's anything that could be shared in terms of people experiencing what they've found whenever they've come by this location or stayed in it, and then please, post your comments, share them below. It'd be fascinating to see if anyone else is able to report that there's a strange thing, a strange feeling, whatever it is, there at the Cecil Hotel. If anyone else has that particular experience, and the hotel is there right now to this day, you can stay in it, you can rent from it. So again, if anyone is brave enough to do that, it'd be interesting to see what people have to state afterward, or if anybody has stayed already there in the past or knows anybody that has stayed in there in the past, then it'll be interesting to see or hear about that too. So the Cecil Hotel, what do you guys think? Is this a location of a possible Genius Loci? Something else entirely? Fascinating stuff. It'll be interesting to hear what your comments are below. Check out the video again too when you have a chance. Tragic video, poor video, but it is very, very creepy, very unsettling. So check it out when you have a chance. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.